Hello, everybody. I don't know how many people are able to join us on the new live stream, but I'm sure a lot of you will watch a little bit later. Apologies that the last one went down. So let's continue with the team news. We're much more pushed for time now. So, Benny boy, let's get straight into it. What's the team news with Bournemouth?
Yeah, we have heard from Gary O'Neill, but he was one of the managers that we heard from with around about sort of 12 to 13 hours just post final whistle. So we take what he says with a pinch of salt. Players hadn't been evaluated. They were just coming into the building for a recovery session. What we do know, Marcus Tavernier, he was forced off with a hamstring related issue. That's his third one since December, missed a load of games. So you suspect that he won't recover in time. Also checks over Marcos Senesi. That was cramp fatigue related. And also Matthias Vina. Gary Neal said he played longer than he wanted him to, done the full 90 minutes. But again, that was fatigue related. So there could be a little bit of freshening up of the Cherries team.
Now, Jodre said that isn't 7 years the average that a marriage lasts? Time for a new computer, Jason. It is indeed. Today is the last broadcast with this one, and I said in the comments that it might have to get a special send-off like your microphone did, Ben, after its antics today. Arsenal up next. Terrible result, 4-1 loss. Let's see what they can do this week, but I was thinking as an Arsenal fan we might see more rotation with the team, but you've gone with exactly the same team as game week 33, or is that it's not been updated yet, as we tell people it's not updated till like the final kind of last few minutes? Well, what is your thinking on this, Ben?
Yeah, I still think Mikel Arteta will, in his own mind, while it's mathematically possible, I still think he'd like to go strong. Of course, Arsenal don't play until Tuesday night. So if you caught it's a protracted game week, so there's plenty of recovery, rest there. That is arguably his strongest team that he's got at the moment. So I don't really see any change in that. Look, anybody can be on the receiving end of a heavy defeat from Manchester City. So, I wouldn't read too much into that. If it really looks as if the league is slipping away from Arsenal, then maybe we'll see a little bit of change in that Arsenal starting 11, but certainly not for the game at Chelsea, in my opinion.
HD Core has said, I would stay away from Arsenal. They are bottle jobs and can't handle the pressure. I think it's a bit more nuanced than that. They're not like Bottom Hotspur. It's not in the club's DNA to bottle things. We have actually won things. But what I would say is I would leave their assets as well. So I agree with you in one sense. I think that, especially with Rob Holding in the side, you just can't trust a lot of what happens because, Holding disrupts the build-up play, the press, everything is so bad because of him. Slavcho's asked, how do we contact you on Twitter? Go to @Ben or @Jason _ _McKenna. I forgot my own one then. Much more used to saying yours, Ben. But yeah, just tweet at us. So just, put our @ rather than any hashtags or anything. Just try and tweet us directly. I'm more likely to answer because you get deluged with stuff, Ben. So I can always just send Ben, a little picture and go, mate, answer this. That's not to boost my followers or anything. It's literally, I'm just thinking for expediency for you. But also Slavcho liked my picture of the of the offside. The one that we put up, Ben. That was quite funny. Aston Villa are up next, and I'm worried about their run of form into the end of the season. But is there any injury worries that people need to be aware of?
Yeah, none in and none out. Basically, as you were in that Villa treatment room, Bubatu Kamara, there's still hope that he will feature before the end of the season. Ongoing ankle problem. He might, outside chance, rejoin team training from next week. Philip Coutinho, also he's been out for well over 2 months now with a hamstring problem. He's edging closer. Also Leon Bailey and Matty Cash. That was an initial 2 to 3 week problem, calf problem that he picked up playing for Poland. We haven't seen him since the back end of March, I believe now. So again, definitely out of this weekend's match. And we'll see, hopefully, maybe outside chance for game week 35, or if not, maybe game week 36.
So we shall continue with the team news. We're going to try and get through these as quickly as possible, but do remember to put in your comments below. We will try and answer as many as possible, but we do have to head off at that 3 o'clock mark. Brentford up next. You've changed the team up. So what is the reasoning behind this?
It'll probably get changed again, in all honesty, Jason. We've just heard from Thomas Frank. So in terms of personnel and injuries, Christoph Ayer, he has returned from that ongoing calf issue, played for the under-21s on Thursday night. He won't be ready. But I'm more inclined to maybe go with a similar team that faced that won midweek. So there may be a couple of little tweaks into that. Kevin Schade haven't included in the team. He was sort of touted as his best performance for the Bees before he was dropped last time out, and maybe that was a little bit of fatigue related cramp. We always know that Thomas Frank is probably going to change around about 2 to 3 players around each game. Hickey on the right hand side is always one that's a little bit susceptible given his injury problems. He rotates with Roeslev. We've seen Wissa come into the team. We've seen Mbeumo drop out midweek. So there's a couple of players who have been sort of fresh, and Zanka is one potentially that it could look to bring in, maybe go towards that more favoured 3-5-2 or the 5-3-2 as you alluded to, Jason. But like I say, this one will be tweaked.
A little bit of a tweak there. And as always, no news on Ivan Toney. Brighton up next, the Seagulls. Bit of a shock result there with Nottingham Forest. They're very good at home, Forest, but didn't expect them to beat Brighton. It was a bit of a shocker, but I guess they'll reset. Maybe the FA Cup fatigue had a bit of effect on them. And obviously, it's another game really, really quickly coming round. Is there going to be changes in this team because of that reason?
There will be certainly changes in this. Initially, when I put the team out, Evan Ferguson, who was touted for a return to the squad, we have just heard from Roberto De Zerbi, and he said, look, there is a chance, but we're not going to take any risks. We still have 7 games after this. He's still a young lad. That's having me, lean more towards maybe Danny Welbeck, certainly starting on this occasion. I think Undav may have got a late disallowed goal as well down at the City ground. He could be pushing for a potential start. We've seen Buonanotte start and Cisco. So there could be a couple of potential changes in that. Joel Veltman in on the right-hand side. We know that he missed the game. He picked up a bit of a hamstring issue. Hasn't been involved in the 11 in the last 2, and that was merely as a precautionary measure. But De Zerbi said that Veltman is likely in a position to start this game week. So that's why we have him. And of course, that releases then Pascal Gross to play a little bit higher up the pitch.
And you're going to keep Steele in there as well. No worries on that. That's the kind of other worry that people have about Brighton.
Look, Jason Steele came in, unfortunately picked up that slight injury which brought Sanchez back. I always said that I thought Sanchez would start in the FA Cup, and then he reverted back to Jason Steele. I think, he done nothing wrong at the City ground. He saved that penalty. Was it Morgan Gibbs-White? Or have I totally got that wrong? He did. Am I imagining that, Jason?
The penalty scorer for Forest was Morgan Gibbs-White, yeah.
Yeah. Did Jason Steele not save a penalty? I have absolutely blew that one, haven't I?
I think he might have. I'm confused now.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure he got 10 points, and he conceded 3 goals, and he's 2 of those bonus points. So I'm sure he did save a penalty. I don't recall from who. Oh, Brennan Johnson, man. Brennan Johnson. I knew I wasn't hallucinating.
Brennan Johnson. Sorry, the goal scorer was Gibb White.
Yes,
the penalty miss was Brennan Johnson.
Yes. I knew, honestly, it's late in the season. Games coming thick and fast. It's been a horrendous week. Look, long story short, Jason Steele in goal. Move.
Spent too much time on that one. We're all under a bit of stress, especially because this damned computer. But promises next week, along with the shoe. You'll show the shoe then, this mysterious shoe, but obviously today we're pushed for time. Game week 34, Chelsea will not be looking forward to this at all. But a huge, inclusion there. Aubameyang up top. Reasons thinking, Mr. Ben?
Where does Frank Lampard go? Is it 5 games in charge now and 5 defeats? Aubameyang was introduced from the bench. Lampard did allude to the fact that, we looked a different team with a number 9, leading the attack. Shock horror. Starting without a recognised centre forward so many games. So the only issue that you've got really is that lack of sharpness, that lack of conditioning. But I just think Frank Lampard has to take, a bit of a gamble. And of course, it's against these old boys. It's against these former employers. He has a little bit of an axe to grind with Mikel Arteta. They parted ways. It wasn't, they didn't leave on the best of grounds. So I just think, do you know what? What an opportunity for Aubameyang to get thrust in there for Lampard, to take a bit of a gamble and then I'm sure he still has a lot of friends down at the Emirates, but I'm sure he would absolutely love to get a goal as well against Arsenal and stick one in the eye of Mikel Arteta.
He would love it. Kepa between the sticks though. A lot of people are asking, is it Mendy's time to come in? What do you think, Ben?
Nothing would surprise me with this Chelsea lineup at the moment. Like I say, I think Frank Lampard's just clutching at straws and he's going to have to roll the dice. I don't necessarily see the issues with performances and have necessarily been with Kepa. We questioned whether Mendy would come in initially. Kepa had been fairly vocal about the Frank Lampard dismissal when it was, and he said a few things about the coach which we thought would maybe go against him, and potentially that injury to Mendy, after surgery on his finger, probably that maybe helped make that be a little bit of an easy decision. So I don't know, it's a tough call. It's one I wouldn't touch anyway.
Eagles up next, Crystal Palace. Any news there?
Yeah, Wilfried Zaha back training with the first team for the past few days. He will be included in the squad, but as you see here, I certainly don't expect him to start. That's been an adductor issue. We revert probably more back to the team that we've seen, prior to the defeat. We do have Richards starting at centre-back, although Roy Hodgson said he was still hopeful that Joachim Andersen could recover from that knock that he picked up midweek. But I'm gambling here and playing the percentages.
And John Stone still between the sticks even after a bit of a howler against Wolves.
Yeah, well, look, it's one of those. I mean, I think he done quite well. He was lucky, maybe not to receive a red card. One of those things. I just think he deserves his place on his performances ahead of Guaita.
Okay. Everton up next. Any changes to the team who are fighting for their lives against relegation now?
Yeah, they're playing on Monday night. So again, that gives them that additional day's recovery. Otherwise, I maybe would have questioned the involvement of Dominic Calvert-Lewin. 3 games in the space of what would it be, sort of 8 days, I think is probably just about doable. But Sean Dyche again, we're coming at the stage of the season where Sean Dyche needs to take risks. He's got to gamble. And who else to lead that attack if Dominic Calvert-Lewin does? Because nobody really has been able to fill his shoes. Doucouré, Onana back into midfield. And on the right-hand side, I have Seamus Coleman there. Again, he's recovered from his latest hamstring injury setback.
Interesting. Jandre Bottas has said, I need my bench this week, playing bench boost. Good luck, Jandre. I will be playing my triple captaincy. Fulham up next. Any news from the Cottagers? And obviously, Ben, how many games left for Mitrovic on his ban?
Yeah, Mitrovic, I think he's serving, say, game 6 of maybe his 8 game weeks. So that should put him back in for a return. We've penciled him in for when is it, Jason?
Now I don't.
When is it?
Let's see if people have been paying attention. It's May.
It's May, right? Definitely.
It's
May.
after the 10th. How many days? One, maybe two, maybe 3 days after the 10th?
Oh, it's 1 day before the 14th.
Oh,
Jason.
okay. 1 day before. Giandre's got it. 13th of May,
Yeah.
everybody. That's
Cheers,
when
well done,
Mitrovic is
Giandre.
back.
Yeah. And Jason, what is May the 13th?
Well, it's the day that Mitrovic comes back, isn't it?
Yes.
And also somebody very special was born then. I'm trying to think of a celebrity that isn't you.
Romelu Lukaku.
Is that actually true?
Yeah, that's true.
Amazing. Okay, yours and Romelu. I know who I'd rather have up front at the moment, to be fair.
Ben and Rom.
Yeah, Ben and Rom. Okay, back to the injury news.
Yeah.
Fulham, what is the latest there?
Yeah, Willian, he came out of the lineup after feeling his hamstring in the warm-up midweek. Big question marks over his availability, so we have Mana Solomon in there. On the right-hand side, Harry Wilson, he was withdrawn during the opening exchanges of that game. Thankfully, it wasn't injury-related. It was more of an illness issue or stomach cramps, so he should be fine, and that's why we have him back in the starting 11.
So Marius has said the 13th is a special day. Jondra said it's not a Friday, is it? Let's hope it's not. Leeds up next. What's the latest from there?
Yeah, we've heard Luis Sinistera picked up an ankle ligament problem midweek. That rules him out for the remaining matches. So there's a couple of potential options for Javier Gracia. I have went with Aronson, but he did talk about the Willie Nonto and bringing him in and how much of an impact he could have on the team. So this is one that we could look to tweak. Max Vuba, he hasn't trained with the team, although Gracia wouldn't go as far as to say that he'd rule him out. He said he would make a decision on the actual game day. I've spoke to many members of backroom staff previously about team selection, about players training, and effectively, if they're not with the team, the team the day before a match, they will not be considered, period. So if Max Wuba is, then at one, it'll be a big surprise, and at two, it just shows you how desperate Gracia is getting at the moment. I have went with Liam Cooper as opposed to Pascal Struijk.
John Dre has asked, Notto was so good before his injury, why don't they play him now? Is that because they're managing the situation conservatively, or is that purely tactical reasons, Ben?
There were initially, it was a minor sort of ankle sprain, picked up playing for Italy. And by his own admission, Javier Gracia said, we just wanted to, as a precautionary measure, just keep an eye on things for a few weeks. But since then, he's been absolutely fine. So it's been more of a tactical decision. And when pressed with regards to his non-involvement, he comes back, he's fairly monotone and he's fairly expressionless. He just talks about the picking his team and his personnel and his tactics around the opposition. So he felt that the teams that they've played up until this point, his personnel, the players would do better against those, and that didn't involve Nonto. But like I say, sort of suggested or hinted that the Italian is due for a return very soon.
I wouldn't be picking Bamford after that absolute glaring miss. Leicester up next, though. What is the quick news on the Foxes?
Yeah, I think Jamie Vardy, given his performance, will come back into the team. Kelechi Iheanacho unfortunately picked up a groin problem. We've seen him pull up in the build-up to that equaliser on Tuesday night. Wouldn't go as far as to say he's out for the season, but certainly he's in a race against time to feature again. Johnny Evans may join the group in training tomorrow. That's been injury and illness related, but don't see many changes or if any in that back line.
And interesting that Soyuncu is now confirmed to be going to Atletico, onto bigger and better pastures, really. It shows you maybe how badly Brendan was running the club. Liverpool up next. What is the latest on them? Because they've got a double game week that a lot of people are interested in.
Yeah, it's a difficult one, this. They went 3 games unchanged, then Canate dropped out for Joel Matip. That wasn't injury-related, more of a precautionary measure due to muscle fatigue. And of course, Joel Matip scores the winner at West Ham, so does Jurgen Klopp maintain Matip alongside Virgil van Dijk, or does Canate come in? It could be that Matip starts this one and maybe Canate in the second So it's difficult. We also see Curtis Jones has started 5 straight games for the first time this season. He's keeping out Thiago Alcantara. Look, there are a few changes that could be made here. Diego Jota is another one, attracting a lot of interest, been playing really well in recent games, but on the back of his heavily disrupted early season, he's picked up a little bit of a knock to his back, a heavy blow. He should be fine, but for that reason, I just see he maybe, taking a place on the bench, like I say, returning for that second game of the double. I do have Darwin Núñez starting. Might just be a little bit too soon for Luis Diaz, although in terms of who Jurgen Klopp thinks is a better, I do think he believes that Diaz is a better player than Núñez. It's just purely down to that little bit of sharpness and that conditioning.
Yeah, and I guess, with their injury issues this season, Liverpool will not be wanting to take any chances. Now, Manchester City, this is the big one. A lot of people were worried about Kevin De Bruyne. What's happened with him? Is he all right? Pep's words after the game seemed to be not too bad.
Yeah, everybody's fine. Everybody's trained as normal. The only player currently sidelined is Nathan Ake. He's progressing. No definitive timeline. Understand that he is targeting that first game against Real Madrid in the Champions League, so all good on that front. And yeah, basically a clean bill of health.
So no real changes for the team. I'm going to bring it back to Liverpool, though. Jandre says, come on, Ben, Núñez or Jota. Who would you pick in your team?
Purely based on form, then Diego Jota, without a shadow of a doubt. Mm-hmm. Like I say, I'm not entirely sure that Jota starts this first game of the double. But likewise, I'm not sure even Darwin Núñez does either. Like I say, I think it's very close between him and Luis Diaz. But Jota would get my vote.
I mean, who from the Liverpool, apart from Salah, would you put in then for that double? Because it's the kind of minutes as well as how well they're playing. Is Jota gonna do better in limited minutes? Is Núñez? Is Gakpo? What is your thinking?
Well, my thinking is I've been on Trent for a while, so I think Jurgen Klopp's had a more settled team. We've seen 3 consecutive wins, all on the spin. Trent was talking on Friday morning. They still believe they have an outside chance of qualifying for the Champions League. That means they must, they've got to win 6 games without question, and then still rely on other teams to drop points. So I think wherever possible, Jurgen Klopp is going to go as strong as needed, take a few risks, take some chances, and like I say, we might see a more settled Liverpool team.
We got a question on Manchester City. Will Foden take minutes off Grealish or Mahrez?
Well, Mahrez minutes, I suppose, come under threat from maybe Bernardo, and Grealish potentially from Phil Foden. But look, there's so many other factors to consider, and the flexibility within how Pep sets up his team and where these players can be deployed. There's nothing to say that Foden couldn't come in even as a false 9 or sitting in behind De Bruyne as a false 9. If Erling Haaland gets himself a couple of goals, City have got the game put to bed and he brings him off. So, like I say, I don't really see. Really, is it one of those two if Foden comes in? I think there's possibilities open up all over the pitch, dependent upon, like I say, other factors in and around each individual game.
Manchester United up next. Any updates from them?
Yeah, Harry Maguire could return to the squad. He was been training individually and missed out, of course, against Tottenham. Elsewhere, Bruno Fernandes should be okay. We know he shook off that ankle problem he picked up in that FA Cup semi-final win over Brighton. Where else do we see? If Maguire comes in, then Shaw could potentially move out to the left, and then really it's a toss-up between Diego Dalot and Aaron van Bissaka. Let's
continue to the Toon. Newcastle. What is the latest? Isaac Platt had limited minutes, but you think he's going to start this week?
I mean, Newcastle team at the minute on form is really difficult one to pick. I wouldn't have expected Eddie Howe to make 3 changes from the side that beat Tottenham 6-1. In his press conference, he spoke about I'll pick players who he believes are fresher or in better condition. And we've seen this flip-flopping between Isaac and Wilson. The two have been playing off each other. There will be a point where both of those players are deployed, but I can't seem to find a way into, getting both of them in without dropping. I cannot see him dropping Jacob Murphy after his performance against Tottenham, comes off the bench and scores. Joe Linton has been a revelation. Joe Willock, I mean, Longstaff has to start. He does the donkey work. He's the legs of that team. So, yeah, I just see this Wilson and Isaac rotation for the foreseeable.
It's a bit irritating for me because I brought in Isaac this week on the basis that Newcastle have 4 really nice home games before the end of the season. I think they can score a bag load of goals in them. And Isaac looks really good, but it's uncertain. It's really uncertain over him. I'm happy to take the risk. I've got a good enough bench. But it is a worry. I've skipped past, I think, Nottingham Forest and Southampton there, mainly because not a lot of interest there. But yeah, what is the latest with Forest quickly, Ben?
Yeah, Nico Williams out for the season. That was unfortunately a fractured jaw. John Joe Shelby omitted from the matchday squad in recent matches. Reports that he had a bit of falling out with Steve Cooper. He's played that down. He said he's been carrying a knock, so he could be welcomed back into the squad.
Who falls out with him? He's a lovely man. I like him a lot. Southampton as well, really quickly, Mr. Ben.
Yeah, Peru went off during last night's game to be assessed, but I have Maitland-Niles come in. Also seen Ward-Prowse. Again, thankfully, that wasn't injury-related. It was more illness. Had a bit of a bad chest, sore throat. Conditions on the night didn't make it great. Had a little bit of breathing difficulties, but Ruben Celes is confident that Ward-Prowse will be okay for the weekend.
Do you think that Southampton, they've got the unwanted record of probably being relegated this season, but do they have a positive one of fielding the most double-barreled players in a season,
It's a bit of a nightmare when I'm trying to rate them up, in all honesty. So, and it's one I have thought of: Maitland-Niles, Coletta Carr, Bella Kotchap, Ward-Prowse,
Walker-Peters.
So there's 5. Yeah. So, they're not doing too bad.
Not too
bad. I'm sure Opta Joe will be to confirm.
Yeah.
that one for us. He'll be listening, so...
Of course, everybody listens, even the players do. Tottenham up next. I don't think any injury reasons for why they're playing so badly, but what is the latest there? Do you see any changes?
Pretty much as you were. I think Dan Juma's been a little bit unfortunate in recent times not to get a little bit more game time and even his first Premier League start. Kuwalski hasn't been great. That's why we have Richarlison in there. Again, he wasn't fantastic either, really, against Manchester United. But I think Ryan Mason will give him another opportunity to try and go out there and prove himself.
Marius has come up with a lovely name for Geordie Joe. Goal-Linton. Brilliant. Jondre says Liverpool might tear them apart. West Ham up next. What's the latest for the Hammers?
Yeah, only one known injury absentee as it currently stands. That's Gianluca Scamacca. Underwent knee surgery. That ends his campaign. Again, it remains to be seen how David Moyes wants to manage his squad. But, they're ticking along nicely. A little bit unfortunately against Liverpool. So they could be unchanged.
I mean, with the Hammers, just before we move on to Wolves, do you think that they're on good form now because they're fielding an uninjured team? We've seen... through the season, we'll obviously do our evaluations at the end of the season, but do you think West Ham have been one of the teams most hit by injuries?
Most hit? No, absolutely not.
Okay.
Nobody comes close to Nottingham Forest in that regard.
Oh, of course. Silly me.
I think they have 14 players flagged as doubts this way. Of course, you can look at maybe... particularly in defence, where they had Zuma, question marks over Agard, Ogbonna, Soufal. So they had, a lot of injuries in the same area of the pitch. And that caused the flu complications. I think we've seen Declan Rice has dropped a little bit deeper on occasions. I may have even thinking that Thomas Souček has as well as a one-off. So that's been a problem. But, we've seen at Newcastle the competition between Isak and Callum Wilson. At West Ham, maybe Danny Ings hasn't been pulling up trees since he arrived down at the London Stadium. And Mikel Antonio has, picked up in recent matches. He's starting to get some goals. And yeah, maybe just been a little bit unfortunate. The European distractions have probably helped with confidence. They've carried that through into the league. And like I say, they're doing all right in recent games, and very unfortunate maybe not to get something from that Liverpool game.
Last team, Wolves. Any updates on them?
I think Wolves could be unchanged. It doesn't happen very often under Julian Lopetegui. He does like the chop and change that are very a lot of players sort of like for like. Hugo Bueno, the Spaniard, recovered from that hamstring problem. We have him back in at left back as opposed to Totti Gomez, and also Ruben Neves. He was back from suspension back into the starting lineup again for their last win. Maybe you could question whether Diego Costa, can start again in successive matches, given he's approaching the twilight years of his career. But I'm prepared to take a gamble, based purely on that result midweek.
So we have the patented final question from DeAndre. He said, take a punt on Jota or go with Isaac. What do you think, Ben? I think they're both risky, aren't they?
I'm presuming you don't mean because obviously the double.
Yeah,
I'd be lured by the double if it was just for 34.
Yeah, he says he does save for the double.
Yeah.
Long term, I like Isaac, but
yeah, I do. Look, I like Isaac and Wilson, and even though minutes are flip flop between the two, they're still got appeal. They're still bringing home the points. I think it'll be, what it is. I think Southampton are going to sit in deep. I think it's going to be it certainly isn't going to be a walkover. I'm not expecting us to hit them for 6 as we did with Tottenham.
Yeah,
I would go Jota.
Are you saying Southampton are better than Spurs?
Defensively, yes.
Right, everybody, that is a good point to end on. Clip that. That's going to go viral. That's kind of who's the guy who said Haaland wouldn't score that many goals?
It was Rory.
Rory Jennings.
Yes,
that's your Rory Jennings moment. Anyway, cheerio for now, everybody. Apologies with the first stream, but next week it will all be back because I'll have a brand spanking new computer. I can do a computer reveal. Ben can do a shoe reveal. Marius has said we should do a cooking thing for your birthday, Ben, whenever that is. I forget the date, we've not mentioned it at all. But thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Thank you for your patience as well.